are you doing?
Good, how are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Testing.
Well, it could pick me up.
All right. Well, good afternoon. We're 5 minutes late, so if you're used to coming to late service, we're about 15 minutes early. So we'll go ahead and get started. And the devotion, usually when we have our fall meeting, I have a devotion about Thanksgiving because it's the right time of year. Today I went in a little bit of a different direction. So the devotion today is about a house divided. So, if a house is divided against itself, that house cannot stand. Mark 3:25. So Abraham Lincoln once gave a famous house divided speech aimed at preserving and restoring the Union. Although his actual biblical quote comes from a statement of Jesus that Satan cannot drive out Satan, therefore Jesus could not be possessed by Satan, it nevertheless raises the question, is your house divided? Is your house divided against itself? Are you sometimes Dr. Jekyll and sometimes Mr. Hyde? You want to live for Jesus, but often live for yourself. You want to go to church, but sometimes find it easier to stay in bed. Is your family divided against itself? Jacob and Esau fought. Although they were brothers, Absalom rebelled against his own father, David. And in what ways does your family scrap, undermine, and shatter the unity which God intends? Is your church divided against itself? Jews and Gentiles, with their differing cultural backgrounds and traditions, clashed in the early church. The congregation in ancient Corinth was plagued by factions. Similar conflicts can and do arise today. The ultimate division pits Christ against Satan. Satan unites with the world and our sinful flesh to war against God. The battle rages fiercely and reveals itself in our divided lives. See the house divided for what it is, Satan versus God. So who can unite our lives? Jesus Christ is united with the Father and the Holy Spirit. His life, death, and resurrection, united with the Father's will, works salvation and restores unity between God and humanity. The Spirit rules the flesh. We have the power to fight Satan. Christ unites our families through his cross, giving us love to share and forgiveness to heal our divisions. He unites our churches through his pure, inspired word and unifying sacraments. So let us pray. Dear Lord, bring us together in your love. Amen. All right. So here's our agenda for today. It's the same as it always is. It's called out by the Constitution. So we've already done the devotion. We have attendance pads. One's hanging out back there right now. One's up front. So if you haven't signed in, please come and sign in on one of the attendance pads. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave for our financial update. Get this turned.
All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. I think I know most people, but if not, Dave Fine. I have the honor of being your treasurer. This is my fourth year, my fourth budget that I've done. So if you've been with me for the last three, it'll look very much the same. Okay, so I'm going to just give you a real quick snapshot on how we developed the budget, talk a little bit about the people that are involved in that process. Then I'm going to give you an update on where we are in 2023. So when we look at the 24 budget, we always look at changes against the 23 budget. So you would logically want to understand how are we doing against the 23 budget. So I'll share that with you, and then we'll just we'll get into the budget itself. So this process actually starts back in August. There's about a dozen budget owners with a couple hundred lines in the budget, and the board sends out information to those budget owners, asks for input. We go through about a almost 2-month process of collecting and asking questions and going back and forth with the budget owners. Eventually we pull it all together. Hopefully it's close to balancing, so we don't have to do a lot of work to figure out how to balance it, and this year that was the case, so that was very good. We then had our town hall about a month ago. So how many people were at the town hall? Most folks, a lot of folks. Okay, well, it's going to sound a lot the same then for you, and I apologize for that. And then here we are today, reviewing the final budget, and then we will vote on that when we're done. So just for those that were in the October meeting, there hasn't been any changes since what was presented, so I'll just share that with you. So these are the budget areas that we look at. On the left-hand side of the chart is the church, the right-hand side is the school. And what I wanted to do on this slide is just give a shout out to everybody that was a part of that budget process. Just my thanks to everyone. You know, the budget owners typically have day jobs, and I know some of them worked late nights to get input to us. So if you see any of the folks that helped in this process, appreciate your saying thank you, because it is an added burden above what everybody's doing every day. So thanks to everyone for their help. Okay, so how are we doing 2023? We're doing quite well financially. I will draw your attention to the blue box, and you can see that if you compare where we stand today to budget, we're about $104,000 better than budget. So that's a pretty strong position, and I'll share with you some of the details as to why that is. So as we look at the 24 budget, you can understand where some of the changes are coming from. I'll point out here that if you look at income, this is general offerings. So the purple line is actuals, so that's what's been received, and the yellow line is the budget, so that's what we were expecting to receive. So we're a little bit behind. As of the end of October, it was about $36,000. I will also just convey that November and December, from a budget perspective, are when we expect the most giving. So, you know, there's about 20% of the income that we're planning for November and December. So, hoping that giving is strong like it has been in the past. If you look at expenses, that's where the big difference is. We actually are about $140,000 below budget on expenses. And I will share some details as to why that is. Okay, busy chart, but if you look down the left side, this is all the different budget areas we track. If something's on budget, it'll be right on this line here, which is 0. If it's better than budget, it goes to the right. If it's worse than budget, it goes to the left. So you can see some pretty big bars going to the right. The biggest one right in the middle there is the school. So about $100,000 better than budget through October. And I'll show you why that is when we get into the next slides. Church staff is doing well. If you were here, I think in June at our last meeting, we talked about the fact that we had 1 month off on paying health benefits. I'm sorry, on paying worker benefits. So overall, if you look at all the areas we pay worker benefits, that's about a $20,000 one-time benefit. So that shows up here in the church staff. We're a little bit under budget in maintenance. The only area we're really over is utilities. And what drove that, believe it or not, was last winter. We had a very significant snow plowing bill. So we're about $12,000 over budget on snow plowing. So hopefully that'll balance out this year and we'll have less snow plowing to do. But that's what drives that. Everything else pretty close to budget. So just to show you the school a little bit, understand that $100,000 under budget. Financially, very good news. From the school perspective, it's a mix of good news and challenge. And the good news, you can see across the 4 areas that we measure, all 4 areas are doing better than budget. So that's very positive. If you go one level deeper, you can see what's driving it. And one thing you'll notice is income is up quite a bit. And that is a positive thing. That means enrollment is very strong. We had a tuition increase last year, so we're seeing that now this year in increased income. So overall, that's a big part of the reason the school is doing better. Higher enrollment, higher income. The one area that's really driving underrun is staff expense. And in the area of childcare, that's all about the staffing challenges that we have. So that's why I say there's good news, and then there's some challenging news. And the challenging is we still have not been able to staff the school to the level that we've budgeted. We don't have a director of childcare right now. So good for the budget, bad for the school, bad for the people that are making the difference in her absence. And we've got a couple of openings, and so people are filling in. So the plan going forward is that we're going to fill these roles, so that's what's in the budget. But anyway, that's a big reason why we're doing better in the school. Better income, haven't been able to fill the staff from a financial perspective. Any questions on that? That's kind of the overview for the 23 budget. Okay, so then let's get into what's different in 24. So starting on income, I mentioned we were down versus what we had budgeted. You know, we have a stewardship drive, commitment Sunday. All that data comes in. Gary Schrupp rolls it all together, and he sends us a number and says, this is what we can expect to see for giving in 2024. And he's usually pretty accurate. So this reflects what Gary told us. And he said that we're going to see overall a decrease compared to the budget from 2023. And as I mentioned, to date, we are below giving budget level. So I think that supports that's probably a reasonable assessment. But anyway, that's this $29,000 less compared to the 23 budget. On the expense side, staffing, we've got raises, we've got healthcare benefit increases. That's about a $16,000 increase in cost for staffing. Board of Trustees, I mentioned we were underrunning in 23. So as we look to 24, the budget is established at about where we're running in 23. So we think that's reasonable. Then there's a bunch of different board committees, the elders, Board of Youth, Board of Social Ministry. You add all those up and it just a very minor change overall. 2K increase. And then here's the big change in the budget this year, and that's the school. So last year we had projected $135,000 investment. This year that's $48,000 better. And when we get into the school, you'll understand why that is. So you add up 29,000 less in income, 29,000 less in expense, and you end up with a balanced budget. So that's the big picture. Oops. I hit the wrong button. No doubt. There we go. Okay. So this is the busy numbers chart. If you're into the numbers, you can look at this and ask questions, but I'll explain the chart format. So income on the top, expenses on the bottom, and then we have for each budget area, how do we do in 21? How do we do in 22? What are we projecting for 23? So the projection for 23 is based on all our actuals through October, which I just showed you, plus what we have in the budget for the last 2 months of the year. So that's where that comes from. Then we have what the 23 budget was, and then here is what we'll be voting on today. This is the proposed 2024 budget by area. And if you're interested in comparing how the proposed is to the budget or to what we're projecting to end for the year, that's what these two columns on the right are. So if you want to compare the 24 budget to where we're expecting to land, you look at the blue. So what this says is of a general offering income of $1,088,000. In 23, we're projecting to be at $1,081,000. So that's about a 0.7% increase. And that's, again, based on what we received on Commitment Sunday. And if you want to compare to the budget from last year, that's what the green is. So we had budgeted $1.12 million. We're budgeting in 24, as I said, 1.088, and so that's a decrease at 2.8%. So that's how you read the chart. Any questions on any of the items on there? I wasn't intending to go through each line, unless you'd like me to. No. Okay, moving to the school. So just from a big picture, we mentioned income was up in 23. There's another tuition increase plan to keep up with inflation, and I know we did a really nice job, Renee and the team, looking at different, I'll say competitors out there in the childcare world to establish, what are the right rates. So there's some increase in tuition, increase in enrollment. The total for the school in terms of income is $108,000 increase in income. So really, really good news. And currently, I know we have waiting lists for most of the classrooms too. So it's from an enrollment perspective, it's strong and it's driving good income. On the expense side, staffing, that same salary increase and cost of benefits. Again, I mentioned we were planning to, in the budget, that we're going to fill those staff positions. And we do have the director in for 6 months of the year. We also have extra hours to cover the absence of the director for the first 6 months of the year, as some of the staff are filling in for what the director is going to be doing. So that's an assumption in the budget as well. And that results in a $52,000 increase to the budget year over year. And then programs, so this is the cost to actually run those programs. Pretty small numbers here, pluses, minuses, about an $8K increase year over year. So that nets an expense increase on the school side of about $60,000. So if you net that against the expected increase in income, that's where you get to a $48,000 improvement compared to the 23 budget. Questions on that? Am I putting you all to sleep? We're almost done. Last slide. So this is the same format that I explained to you on the overall church. And this is the school detail. And you can see we've got the 4 major areas: kindergarten, food service, child care, extended care. And I just like to look at what was the 23 budget, what's the 24 budget, and this is the total. So kindergarten is improving, about 18%. Food service is improving, about 37%. Extended care improving. And so across the board, all areas compared to the 23 budget are projecting to do better. So I think that's a positive message for the school. And so that is my last slide. Open the floor to questions if there are any. And Josh is happy to answer them. No questions? Yes.
Well, I talked to you beforehand about fund for the organ for replacement because it's dying on us. Did you have the number at all?
Yeah, so the question is, the organ is been around, I guess, for quite some time, and it's there's a lot of concern that it's going to need to be replaced, or certainly some significant repairs. And the question is, you know, what do we have set aside for that? I can say from a fund perspective, there is not really any kind of significant fund that would take replacement. I know we've looked at what would it cost to replace, and I think some of the numbers we threw around were like $500,000. So it's not a minor expense. It's a major expense. So it's something that, as the board of directors has talked about, we're talking about other alternatives to going with a full, you know, $500,000 replacement. But I know we're talking also about forming a committee to look at that. I think Pastor mentioned that in one of our board of directors meetings. But go ahead, Josh. I know you got something to add there.
I don't think we can have both mics. Yeah, so Pastor Lamel is working to form a committee to look at different options for the organ. Obviously, from a budget standpoint, that is not an annual cost, so that's why you're not seeing it in the budget. You know, the $500,000, we've heard anywhere from, you know, it could be $1.5 million to, you know, there might be some less expensive options. So Pastor Lamel is going to be working to form a committee, and then we'll be working to see that committee's work and what the best option is, and hopefully be bringing something back before the congregation at a later date.
Yeah, I would recommend a campaign of some sort, and if people like ladies and gentlemen want to come forward with $500,000, I want to know that you're ready to accept it.
I can accept that right now. So, yeah, so we'll look at we'll let that committee do their work, come up with the recommendations, figure out what the recommendation is before we figure out what type of a campaign makes the most sense, and that probably varies a lot based on the cost of the recommendation.
Is that just replacement cost, or is that repair cost?
So that's what we need the committee to determine. I'm sure there will be differing costs. I think we've done quite a bit of maintenance on our existing organ. And Pastor, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at this point, continuing to just refurbish or repair is going to be challenging for a long-term solution because of the age of it and the wear.
There are electronic organs. I know some of the pastor orchestrated getting a new organ for the Wisconsin church that they're in. So you could get, with today's technology, with today's electronics, you can get a pretty good playing one for about $50,000.
Yeah. So Mark's comment was about electronic organs being available. The technology is much better than it was years ago, and you can get an electronic organ for a more budget-friendly cost. So when the board of directors and when we met with Pastor Lamel, or I've spoken with Pastor Lamel, we've asked to look at all options, including the electronic options. Yeah, Shelley.
I would also say that whoever we are fortunate enough to be able to hire to be our new organist probably would have a lot of information and some say on that too.
Yep. So that comment was that whoever, as I think most people in the room know, that Libby is stepping down at the end of the year after the Christmas services, and will be, I think that the staff right now is looking to hire a new organist, and that new organist would likely have some input on what makes the most sense. So I'm sure Pastor Lamel will include said person in those committee discussions. All right. Is there any other questions about the budget or discussion? So if we voted on who missed Dave at the town hall, it'd be unanimous. So then I guess I would need a motion, a second, and we would vote on the budget. All right. So, do you get that, Kent, wherever you are? All right. Allison. All right. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. So we have a budget for 2024. Thank you, Dave.
I like colors too.
All right. So, Board of Directors just want to, give the congregation some insight as to what we've been working on in addition to the budget. So, additional things that we've been working on are we've been working closely with Renee and the school staff to figure out, one of the questions that we got at the town hall, we went into it quite a bit, is kind of the investment that we make into the school, and is there a possibility to get that number closer to zero? And we've been looking as a board at what that looks like, where there are opportunities. We're continuing to work with Renee and the school staff on that, and continuing, I think, as Dave mentioned in the budget, that has gotten better year over year. We're trying to continue to get that better so we can, use those funds to really benefit the staff that is working so hard and being short-staffed, and I think we covered that at the town hall. We mentioned that we have some COVID employee retention credits that have come in. They're still coming in, but the board is working with the trustees and the group of trustees on what makes most sense for large items. I know at the town hall, Mark, you asked about if the organ is included in that. It is included as one of the potential items that we could spend, but really kind of some large items, the elevator, the boilers, some of those other things that would be significant costs that we are not annual costs that we would put into a budget, but how do we spend those dollars? So we're working on that. We've been working with Brian and the Building Expansion Committee on what the next steps are, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the meeting. And then there was a lot of talk over the last several years about how we wanted to get salaries and wages up to district guidelines. We were successful in that. The district is rewriting some of those guidelines. We expect, I think some of them have started to come out. We expect more to be published this spring. So the board is making sure we're keeping an eye on that to make sure we're competitive with kind of the economic state of our world and where wages are at for, for not only churches and schools, but our community that we live in as well. So those are some of the other things that we're working on. From an elders report, I think Roger said they're doing well. They're continuing to move along. No special update at the meeting today. As part of the elders' responsibility of the congregation, we did have some members leave, ask for their release, and or transfer to other churches. We don't have any incoming members at this meeting. We had a significant number in our spring meeting, and I think we'll run another new member class this spring. So usually we see our incoming members in the spring. But these are the members who are leaving, so I think typically we would ask for a vote on acceptance of the release of members. So if I could get all right, so we have a motion and a second from Steve. All right, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. And with that, I'm going to invite Pastor to come up and give an update on ministry.
Thank you, Josh. So as Josh was saying there, with the new members in or members being released, we will have a new member class in the spring. So we will see those really at the spring voters meetings where we'll see those numbers. A few things just to let you know about. First of all, our confirmation and middle school youth ministry. So this is our second year that we have done the confirmation for all grades, 1st through 8th grade, for the first 6 weeks of the school year. And once again, it was I think very successful. For those of you who do not have kids at age range, first and second graders, we teach the Lord's Prayer. Third and fourth graders, we teach the Ten Commandments. Fifth graders, we're teaching the Apostles' Creed. Sixth graders, we're teaching the sacraments. And the seventh and eighth graders are just doing their normal confirmation class on Sunday morning. And it's been, I think, really good to be able to get some of these kids who are a little bit younger familiar not only with the words that we say, but what they actually mean. And so like I said, this is the second year we've done this. I think it's proven so far to be very helpful to those families. We also do want to let you know that confirmation, we actually are doing something a little different this year as well. We have moved from doing a confirmation on Wednesdays. We're just keeping it on Sunday mornings. And so Sunday mornings is when confirmation is taking place now. Pastor Lamel taught the first 6 weeks. I taught the next couple weeks. Joe Orick will be teaching some as well. And so we'll kind of tag team between the three of us. They get to see a little bit of everybody during their time in confirmation for 7th and 8th graders. I also do want to let you know that for those of you who may not remember, we started last year doing First Communion for 6th graders after they had gone through the sacrament class with me and their parents. Their parents have to be there for that. And we had our First Communion for 10 of our 6th graders on November 5th. So that was very exciting for us as well. And then also the middle school youth ministry. This year we did start a regular Sunday night every week middle school youth ministry. If you don't, I think all of you understand what the middle school is, but if you don't, 6th through 8th grade, that's what we're defining as middle school. And so far we've had over 10, I think, at every single one of those except for maybe one. So we're having a lot of kids who I think are really engaged and having a good time. And so that's been a real blessing for us. My wife Heidi, Alex Kraus, Lauren Freegard, Matt Belmore, they've been helping out a lot with the middle schoolers. So I think it's been really good so far, and just keep praying for that. What I told Heidi and Alex as we started this was, of course, we're going to do Bible study. Of course, we want them to grow in their faith. But these first few months, it's really just about them actually making friends and having a good time, so they want to keep coming here and growing in faith. So we have been doing Bible studies. We have been doing those things, but I think mostly the kids have just been having a good time making friends with one another. I just want to let you know, as a parent, I think this has been really good because the other day after one of these nights, we were driving home with Addie, who's in 6th grade, and Addie's comment to me was, "Dad, I'm so glad we're doing this. I feel like I finally have friends at church." And I think she had friends before, but just people that she actually wants to go out of her way to spend time with. And I don't think she's the only one of those kids who feels that way. So that's been a really good thing. Some staffing updates. I'm pretty sure all of you are aware at this point that Jeff Mockamel retired earlier this year. And let's take a moment again just to thank Jeff for all the years of service that he gave here to us. It was a blessing to work with him, and he was a very faithful servant to our God here. And so, Jeff, really appreciate all the work that you've done over the 25 plus years you were here at Our Savior as the building and maintenance director. And we have replaced. We have filled that position, not replaced. We filled the position. Andy Boyer has been doing that for a little over a month now, about a month and a half, and Andy's doing a really good job. And so we praise God for Jeff and the work that he has done throughout his time here, and we praise God for Andy and the work that he is currently doing here as well. So. Some other staffing information. You are all aware of the organ situation, the organist situation. Fred and I, especially Fred, but the two of us have really begun working on what we can do to fill that on a short-term basis if we need to, but also trying to find the long-term solution to that as well as we go into the new year. And then the last thing I really just want to focus on with the staffing today is the school director. Christina's going to share a little bit later about where we are in the call process. But as far as where we're at currently, just with what we're doing with the school director, we have been kind of piecing it together with a variety of people. Lisa Boyer has really been taking the primary lead in this, so thank you, Lisa. She's been doing a wonderful job. But in addition to Lisa doing that, Carla Bauman has also been a big part of that. Renee Herneman has done a lot of extra work as well. And Renee's here. Let's thank Renee as well. She's done a lot of extra work during this time. And I know Tammy's been helping out as well. So let's thank Tammy as well for that. Yes. I think our staff has, I would just ask you to pray for our staff. They are phenomenal. They have been doing a great job, especially these ladies who have stepped up and taken this leadership responsibility in an interim basis. Without really that much authority, they're doing a really incredible job. But we should be praying for our entire staff, because our staff, I think, has a very good attitude. They're very thankful about being here. They love working here. They love serving the kids. But there is a lot of stress amongst our staff as well. And sometimes a lot of frustration because of how short-staffed we are. And so if you see any part of our staff, but I'm going to specifically say any member of our school staff, make sure you thank them for what they're doing, because they are really working very hard right now. Like I said, all of us are, but it's a little bit different right now on the school side of things, just because of how short-staffed we are. So be praying for them, thanking God for them, and when you have the chance to thank them as well for the work they're doing, please be sure to do that, because it is really wonderful to watch our school staff and the energy and the time they are giving during a season where we're asking a whole lot of them. So make sure to do that if you have the opportunity. You get the next slide, Josh. Yeah, a few other things coming up. 100-year anniversary. We've seen all the things that we've sent out about what we're doing. The next big event we're having is the Congregational Music Celebration on December 20th. So please, if you're not participating in that, and I know quite a few of you are participating in that, but if you're not, please do plan on being here at 6:30. That will be our last, it will be a music celebration, but it'll be a worship service as well. And that'll be our last Advent midweek worship service this year. Also want to let you know that we will be on June 16th. That is Father's Day, but that we'll be having our big 100-year anniversary celebration at that time. We'll have worship here at the church. We are going off-site because the only way we can have one worship service where everyone's actually able to worship together is to not have it here in the sanctuary, but to have it in the gym. I know some of you are sitting there going, why would we have our 100 years worship service not here in the sanctuary? I think, and some of you may disagree with me on this, it's much more important that we worship together than where we worship. And the only way we can fit enough people, the only space we have on our property to fit enough people who will be here for that day is down in the gym. And the reason we're going off site then is because the only place we could actually have a meal is in the gym, and instead of having everyone having to work and clean up, we want to be able to go and celebrate together. So there's more information that'll be coming out about where and when all that'll be taking place. And as I put up there, I did talk to Pastor Zarde earlier this week. He is going to be joining us. And so we've asked Pastor Schrader to come back and to do something in that service. We've asked Pastor Sean Hexel to come back and do something in that service. I know he was not pastor when he was here, but he has become a pastor in the time he's been away, and he was here a very long time as our DCE. So we want him to be a part of that as well. And so that will be happening on June 16th, and I'm really hopeful that both Pastor Hexel and Pastor Schrader will be able to join us as well. But Pastor Zarde will be here for that. Then also want to let you know about evangelism. I think it's very important that we be looking into how we can share the gospel with people in our community. I know there are ways that many of you are doing that already in your daily life, but I do think it's important that as a church, as a church body, we are intentional about how we're doing that together. And so there's some things that we're working on with that. One of the things we're doing is we are putting some door hangers that we're putting together that we're going to have for people just to go into our neighborhood here and just knock on people's door. If they don't want to knock on people's door, just put the hanger on the door. But just let them know, hey, we're here. We're not trying to sell you anything. We're just here. And we want you to know we're here, that we love you, that we're praying for you. And if you're looking for a place to worship, if you're looking for a place where you can hear about God's grace and mercy, come and join us here. So that's one of the things we are doing, and we're going to be working on maybe a few other things as well. Josh, you get the next one. Okay, any questions just on that before we kind of get into update on some of the school items? Yes, Marlene. We can certainly use Jerry Rosamond more in our evangelism program. Yes, yeah. Any other questions? Okay, so just a quick update on some of the things at the school, just our enrollment numbers. You can see them up there. We're doing very well. We do have waiting lists for a number of classrooms, and so that's something we're kind of working on as well, and how we can help bring some of those kids who are on the waiting list into our school. But there's the numbers. You can see them for yourself. Are there any questions on that? And then, what was that? Oh, you want to do this one? Okay, awesome. There you go, George.
Yeah. So we also received an update from the Early Childhood Advisory Committee and kind of what they're working on. So they're continuing to evaluate staffing options, especially for substitute teachers. I think we've heard a lot about, kind of the pressures that are on our staff right now, being short-staffed. They're looking into a second toddler room, as Pastor mentioned. We have waiting lists, so they'd be looking at a small classroom. I think one of the board concerns is, as we've been short-staffed, if we open up another classroom, where does that leave the staffing? I think one of the benefits of opening a classroom is we have more money if we're able to open a classroom. So it's kind of a chicken or the egg that we're looking at, and kind of it's part of the review that's going on of looking at all options. The committee's reviewing our social media presence, kind of what that looks like. I think it has changed throughout time, and building that back up. So they're viewing that. And then how do we minister to families? Some of our marketing budget, and is there opportunity to have additional resources that we share with parents and families of the people who come to our school? So that's what the committee has been working on. We also currently have a call committee out for the school director, and I'll invite Christina up just to give a quick update as the chair of the call committee.
All right, so last spring we presented 2 names of candidates that we had interviewed as a committee. We did vote on those 2 calls. Both of them have been returned. The second one was returned in July. Since then we have met, and we are starting to go through a list of names again. We are reaching out to those that we did reach out to the first time, since we're looking at a new school year, just to see who is open to considering a call for this next school year. So at this time, we don't have any names to present, but we are going through the list, and once we have those that we have met with, we will share them with you. So are there any questions?
Yeah, so the next steps will be, once the call committee has a list of names and we have some recommendations, we will, again, per our constitution, have set up 2 meetings. We're hoping to do that early next year, just because of the timing and some of the timing issues I think we ran into of going late into the summer, asking someone to, maybe who has already committed to a position for the following year, that the winter will be a better time. So keep an eye out for that. We'll be making announcements in church in the bulletin of when those meetings, but we will have 2 meetings. So we'll have 1 meeting to present the candidates, and then we will have a second meeting where we actually vote upon the call. All right, so I received, yeah, Josh.
Before you move on, so I have a question on that early, 2 slides before this. I didn't know what the best place to ask this would be. Forward one more. So you mentioned that there's a committee looking at a second toddler room. You just approved the budget. So what options do they have going into the next school year? If they have a recommendation to expand that, do they have the ability to do that? Could that be a recommendation, or are we not looking to expand that toddler room
Yeah, it's a good question. So the board has had some discussions about this expansion. So if we were to expand, there would be an increased income within the budget that would offset some of those costs. So if we decided to do it, there would be the potential to do it this year. There would likely be similar to when we expanded into infant care. There was some strategic reserve money spent for some capital costs as far as rearranging rooms, doing things like that. That would be something that the board would look at, but there would be income offsets to costs as well. So, and I think at this point, the board would only approve it if we felt that it achieved the goal that we're looking at of getting that investment in the school closer to zero. So it would not, this would not be something that we would get approved if we were going to go further away from zero. I think one of the big concerns in the board meetings right now is staffing, right? We're already short a staff position. To open up a new room, that would mean we'd need an additional teacher. When we've had as difficult of a time as we've had hiring a teacher, that's a big concern. So again, it is a chicken of the egg, because we do think that that would get us closer to zero. If we get closer to zero, the hope is that we can pay our staff more. We can, celebrate them, reward them for the work that they're doing in that way, but we're just not there yet.
I think that's good. I couldn't remember if there was a congregational vote to expand the infant room or not. And I just think if they have the need and the demand is there, and they have the outcome to expand a second toddler, that is a decision the board can take on their own and not have to go to the congregation, because then it just creates a barrier for that to move forward.
Yeah, I think within the operation of the school, I think, the board could make that decision going forward, as long as it remained as a budget neutral. If there was going to be any cost, we would bring that to the congregation, and obviously we would bring any, we would update the congregation, we would keep the congregation informed, solicit feedback. We know that that's big, but I would consider more as operational decisions of the school rather than something that would necessarily have to go to the congregation. All right. So I also received some updates from the various committees. I think you heard from Lori Kroll a couple weeks ago in service here about the good work that the mission committee is doing. They're continuing to do great work. They will be meeting later this month or next month, I believe, or maybe they already met. Tuesday. So they were waiting for the budget to be finalized, so they knew exactly how many dollars would be dispersed to missions in 2024. Now that was done earlier at this meeting, they will meet to discuss the 2024 allocations. Lori informed me that most likely they will be staying largely similar to where they are at this year. We feel good about the missions we're supporting. A couple of things to point out that you'll notice when we meet in June at the meeting, and we'll go over the exact details of the mission. Crossing Cambodia no longer exists in the same format. I think Greg Holtz has decided he's back in the States. So there's another group that is performing similar work, that is still taking care of those children that Greg has been working with for so many years. And there's also a potential new mission to include a Christian club. That was kind of one of the new ones that came up. So a local community here that our church could support. So there will be a full report in the spring about the great work that mission committee does. And as always, you can visit the board down in the fellowship hall. That committee, probably better than any of our other committees, including the board, does a great job of communication and letting you know what they're up to. So please check that out if you haven't. The trustees, so Brian was able to give me an update. So they've been, working with Andy. As we mentioned earlier, Andy's taken over the facilities maintenance at the church. So kind of the board of trustees has been working closely with him. They led the congregation in an event that I think many people participated in to fix the storage shed and update the playground with new sand and new gravel. The parking lot had some repairs done and some resurfacing. They've also been obtaining quotes to modernize the elevator. So they've been doing lots of good work. That's just a few of the highlights that they've been doing. Doing great work there. The other part that was promised in your meeting guide that we wanted to take a little time to discuss is the Building Expansion Committee. So Brian Grandstrand is chairing that committee. Just a quick reminder, this slide you've seen before, just kind of where this came from. A few years ago, we had the long-term planning committee. This came in those survey results that the narthex, there was opportunity there for increasing the size of the narthex and having some more space. So after several discussions, a committee was formed. They started meeting in April. The mandate from the board was to review the need for and options of possible building expansion to assist the board in bringing those options before the congregation. Through the many meetings that they had, that committee determined it prudent to get input directly from the congregation, and a survey was sent out late summer. So just a quick reminder of what the survey was. It was a short survey. There were 5 questions. So the first question was, what would you like the Building Expansion Committee to consider as priorities? And they listed some options, and then there was also an other box where people could fill in additional information. Then what areas of the church would be considered for an expansion? There was just a fill-in-the-blank question of what do you envision in an expansion? The fourth question was, do you think there's a need for an expansion? And then we took some demographic information about the age of the people filling out the surveys. So 83 surveys were gathered. 69 were complete electronically, 14 were hard copies. You can see on the screen here kind of the breakdown of who filled out the survey and what that looked like. So to continue on the survey results, so I'm going backwards a little bit here. So this was question 5. This is question 4. So do you think a building expansion is needed? So you see the yeses and nos. Based on the 83 surveys, the raw numbers are 45 members said yes, or 45 respondents, 27 said no, and there were 11 others. So a couple of things that I just wanted to discuss. So this was the 4th question on the survey. It wasn't the first question of, we didn't ask, do you think an expansion is necessary? So just to keep that in mind. I dug further into the 11 other responses and what those looked like. 10 of those 11 indicated a limited expansion. There was, more people indicated that like the front of the church would be where they would want to expand from the other. And there was also quite a few comments within those others about using the current space that we have. Then digging a little further into the yes votes, they were divided on scope and location, with about 60% of the yes votes saying the courtyard, which means 40% of the yes votes kind of said we should expand in a different area. So I guess the bottom line is, and what I've heard from the committee members in the building expansion and what I've heard from the congregation is, I don't think there's a single unified vision of what an expansion means. That's probably not surprising to anyone. The work that they're doing, as I think the committee has discussed, as the board of directors has discussed, there's lots of different vision of what does it mean to have an expansion? What are we looking to do? How are we looking to do it? And as you can see, there's, a breakdown of people who don't think we should do an expansion at all. There's some that do of those 83 respondents. So the priorities that were selected, and I want to just remind you of these items, people who said we shouldn't do an expansion at all are still included in these items, and that's why you'll see numbers that are like greater than 45. Even though there's 45 respondents that said, yes, we should do an expansion, these numbers are greater because if you said no or you said other, your responses were still included on those questions. If you answered those questions, not everyone did. Some people left those blank, but they were included. So the top 5 items I put up here was to maintain the existing facade was the number 1. So what the front of our church looks like. Better accessibility was the number 2. So there was lots of comments about the stairs coming into the church from the large parking lot, what that looked like. There was comments about accessibility to get to the gym. There was comments about accessibility to get to the fellowship hall. There was a lot of comments about accessibility. A large dedicated area to transition from the sanctuary to the fellowship hall. Obvious entrance to the building. So there were comments about, when visitors come, it's not clear where to even go in when you come on Sunday morning. I think there's also some comments about, so all of the top 5 were options that were selected. That's not surprising. When people can write other, we likely wouldn't get the same answer at these levels. But as far as the obvious entrance, there was also a few comments about the, coming to the church not for a Sunday worship service, where's the entrance and things like that. So both of those could be encompassed in that obvious entrance to the building. And then the 5th one was fixing some of the drainage issues that we've had, some of the water problems that we've had. So what area? As you can see, the courtyard, the front, and the school entry. Again, we broke that down a little bit further to look at those yes votes, and that's where the courtyard was about 60%. So again, there's a lot of difference of opinion of what does that look like? What does an expansion look like? So the third question on there was the fill in the blank of what do you envision a church expansion? I will say there were many passionate responses on both sides. There were a lot of passionate responses. People felt strongly that we need a larger area, that we need it to be easier to get to the gym after a funeral or a wedding, that there's issues. There were passionate responses that we absolutely should not touch the school entrance at all, that we should not do anything with that. There were other responses that said we should use the school entrance and we should use this area to get out to the elevator. There were some responses that said, as we the most common, so the biggest one was space. People just said, a lot of the answers were, we need more space. The second was the accessibility. We already talked a little bit about those comments. There was, how does someone get in from the parking lot if you use a walker or a wheelchair, if you have a hard time walking, how do you get, clearly to the gym? And then there were quite a few passionate comments about stewardship, and this ranged from, we should be limited to it's not the right time to do an expansion. We just paid off our mortgage and we shouldn't be taking out loans again. So very passionate responses, I would say, on both sides. And now you're beginning to see why I chose the devotion I did about division. So additional comments. There were several comments, I just wanted to highlight a few of them that I thought would be valuable just for the congregation as a whole to be thinking about. So there was one comment that was pretty detailed about asking if there was additional steps that we could take to address some of the issues that we saw before deciding on a larger expansion. Could we move things around in the current narthex? Could we do some other things when, as we talk about where the entrance to the church is unclear, especially for visitors? Those were their comment. So if I take those first two comments, are there things we could do with signage? Are there things we can do that may not be a full expansion that we could look at doing before a full expansion is decided? There was some comments about if the largest issues we have is during special occasions. Are there enough of those special occasions to warrant kind of a multi-million-dollar potentially expansion? Does that make sense? There was some comments. So I think one of the items is there was a master plan that was put together many years ago, a couple decades. There was some comments about, that some people felt like the master plan was no longer suited kind of the congregation as we sit today, 20 years later, and that we should relook at it, which I just want to make sure that you all are aware that was the purpose of this committee, was to really relook at different options. And then there was a comment that I wanted to make sure that we were all on board with, is that the question at hand about the expansion really needs a lot of prayer over it. So I think as we become passionate, that is one thing that I can sometimes forget, is to make sure I'm keeping it in my prayers and looking to God for guidance. The biggest thing that's important for me right now as we proceed with this and we continue to look forward to it is, as there are strong and passionate opinions on both sides, I want everybody to remember that regardless of what side you're on and that someone else is on, I read through the comments on each of the surveys, and if the committee wants to add anything to this, but every one of those comments, whether it was strongly opposed or strongly in favor, every one of those comments is trying to serve God, and they want to do what is best for this congregation and for this church and to fulfill our mission. Every one of them. And you may disagree with them, but I just want to make sure that we all keep that in mind, that we are all on the same team. We are unified in Christ. And that's very important, as there is, anytime there's passionate debate about something. So before I talk about next steps, I just wanted to give people an opportunity to, if there's questions. We have several people from the Building Expansion Committee here as well. But if there's questions right now, we can. All right. Take yes for an answer. So the next steps. So the Building Expansion Committee has recommended. So this is a terrific committee, right? There's great people on it. There's architects. There's engineers. There's real people too. They are talented. They are, yeah.
You're not on the committee, right?
I'm not on the committee. But it's a talented group, and I think even within the committee, there's lots of opinions on what this looks like. No one on the committee is an expert in church architecture or church engineering. So that committee has recommended that we find someone who is an expert and we lean on their expertise, right? So they are going to be providing some information and already have provided some information to the board to look to see, would we go out to architecture firms to see what an RFP? I think there was enough comments and feedback that we need to do something differently, and whether that's a mix of, things we can do on our own or things that, we could do some type of an expansion and make sure that there's accessibility issues addressed. There's some of those problems. So that they would go out to architecture firms with an RFP. The primary purpose is to clearly identify those requirements and the associated scope. And it would include 3 preliminary options. So we'd kind of look at a minimum, you know, what would the minimum be to address some of those major concerns, the drainage, the accessibility. There would be a moderate and there would be a maximum, right? Like what's the world? If it's determined to move forward, the architect would then, they would help us recommend a process. And as I've talked with the committee members and they came in with and briefed the board on their progress, what they said is in selection of an architect and recommending an architect, it would be someone who they felt strongly would continue to, their process would continue to involve the congregation. They would give the congregation opportunities to meet with the architects, to meet as a group, to discuss, to give feedback on things throughout the process. That would be an important part of selecting that architect. And then the goal is to come up with a plan, and we're not exactly sure what that looks like because as you may have noticed, we had 200 people in worship. We have fewer than that attending the meeting. So what that looks like as far as making sure that we get everyone's feedback. We got 83 surveys, which is great, but we want to make sure we get everyone's feedback because if we are going to, you know, similar, we talked about you would need a campaign for an organ. Well, if we're going to do any type of an expansion, we're going to need a campaign, which means we need buy-in from everybody in the congregation. We need everybody to be on the same page. So that would be the step that the board would have to plan and develop. How exactly are we going to make sure that we get feedback from everybody, including those that may not be able to come to the congregational meetings for whatever reason, too many pancakes, and you know that we move forward and we do move forward, not divided but united. So those are the steps. I know people have been asking since they took the survey kind of where we're at. That's where we're at right now, and we'll keep moving forward. All right. So if there's no additional questions, I don't believe we have any unfinished business. Is there any new business? No? All right, we actually do not.
I don't know if this is considered new business.
Sure.
Going back to number 6, under evangelism, I'm just wondering, I was a church secretary many years ago, and I worked with the elders on visiting, and were they visiting the people, the members in their lists that were worshiping. I would love to visit, but I don't drive. I can call people, I can do anything to help get the people back to church. That's an interest.
Yeah, so Pastor or Roger, one of you guys want to kind of talk about kind of the, so the question from Marlene is that when, you know, she understood when she was the church secretary that elders reached out to members who either weren't attending or were unable to attend, and the question really was that she would love to be able to help. She can't necessarily go and visit, but she would love to make calls. So it's really a question, going back to the evangelism slide in the ministry, is what opportunities are there for additional, you know, work for our members?
So thank you, Marlene, for the question. Board of Elders, we do go through every single month we meet. We go through the members who are, I guess for lack of a better term, delinquent. And we do make a plan to go and reach out to them. When we do that, I mean, I reach out to them. I know some of the other elders do as well. Is Roger here right now? Roger, let's touch base on that as well afterwards, about how we, maybe not today, but another time, how we can get people like Marlene to be willing to make phone calls involved in that as well. I think it's a very good idea, Marlene. Not just for you, but for anybody else who'd be interested in participating in either visitations or just the phone call. So we do intentionally go through those people, though, who are not here, who have not been in church for a while. And like I said, then as pastor, but then also as the elders, we do make an effort to reach out to them. But I think it'd be a great idea to have more people doing that as well. So Roger and I will make sure we talk about that and we find a way to make sure that you can get involved with that, Marlene, but also if anyone else would be interested in making phone calls or doing visits to those members, that'd be wonderful too. Okay, do we have to do an adjournment motion? Does somebody want to make a motion for adjournment? Kent Hines does. Does somebody want to do a second? All in favor? All right, well then I will close this with a prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for the time that we've had together today, and just for the opportunity as a congregation to come together and discuss the important business of the church. And thank you for a congregation that is able to live in unity together. I know we're not perfect on it all the time, but by and large, we really do live in unity together, and we thank you for that. And God, we just pray that you would be with us as we go from here today. Help us to have safe travels home, and just be with the ministries of this church as we go forward. Thank you for the entire board of directors. Thank you for Josh Pratt and his leadership as the congregational president at this time. And we just ask this all in your name. Amen. All right, thank you all so much.